What I love about security vendors. Go.
20 years ago, security vendors would just throw out whatever they could, and whatever stuck. What I like today is most of them are purpose-built. Most of them come with an idea that they're directed to sell, and then they solve real-world problems now.
It's time to begin the CISO Series podcast.
Welcome to the CISO Series podcast. My name is David Spark. I'm the producer of the CISO Series. My co-host for today's episode, it's Andy Ellis. He's the partner over at YL Ventures. Say hello to the audience, Andy.
Dobre rano. Alebo závislosti od toho, kedy ste na svet, dobre popoludní, dobre večer, alebo dobrú noc.
And the language you were speaking was?
Slovak.
Yeah.
I think I'm now done and I'm going to go back to only English. I think we've had this joke has had its run.
Or you could just not do it. There's another idea.
But I need to have a formulaic greeting.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Nope. Otherwise, I'm stuck trying to make something up and think on my feet, and that never ends well.
Yeah. Well, you don't need a formulaic greeting. Our sponsor for today's episode, by the way, is ThreatLocker, Zero Trust Endpoint Protection Platform. We'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show. ThreatLocker, an absolutely spectacular sponsor of the CISO series. For those of you who haven't been to our website, CISOseries.com, please go there. Lots more programming you can see. So we do want to mention something up front. I'm going to bring in our guest now because he is connected to this person. So our guest on today's episode is the Executive Director of InfoSec and GRC over at Wellstar Health Systems, none other than Mike DeRezzo. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dave. Appreciate it.
We were on a CISO call, and I loved how he was engaging with everybody on the call and was like, oh, this guy would be great on the show. So no pressure, Mike.
No pressure.
Now, I do want to bring something up. This is April when this is dropping, but we're recording this when an unfortunate tragedy happened in the cybersecurity industry. Our most frequent guest, who has been on all of our programming, we adore him. He has been a cheerleader for us. We have been a cheerleader for him. I mean, he was just so supportive of us all the years. He unfortunately passed away 2 days prior to this recording. I'm speaking of Sean Bowen, who recently just got hired on as the Deputy CISO for the gaming division over at Microsoft. If you don't know this, I have a newsletter that I posted with my thoughts and my team's thoughts about it, and we have a few photos. Andy, you said you actually taught Sean at one time.
Yeah, he came to an executive ed class I was teaching at Harvard. I love Sean. Fantastic character. I also originally had met him through a mutual friend. Really loved working with him. So, I hope his family is finding comfort as they mourn, and his memory will definitely be for a blessing.
I can't speak to how phenomenally he supported us. I mean, to think, all the jobs, he was working as a CISO, working for Microsoft, working prior to that World Fuel Services as well. He was so overwhelmed, but he always was able to make time for us, which was incredible. And by the way, he was the person we called when we had a last minute cancellation. And almost every single time he would come through for us, which was incredible. Mike, what's been your connection with Sean?
So I met Sean, I believe, at an ISC Squared conference a number of years ago. He was just in the circle that we were all talking, just introducing each other. Very warm, friendly individual, and reached out as we all do, right? We kind of bond together in our misery and support of our CISO and security jobs. And he was just a good human being.
Yeah. Can't speak more highly for them. So we have more plans for remembering Sean over time, but we're just acknowledging this now. When you're hearing this is going to be a good solid 2 months after the horrible incident happened. But we just want to thank him. And by the way, if you want to hear more of him, just literally go to CISOseries.com, type in his name, Sean, SHAWN, as his first name, and then Bowen, BOWEN. He appeared a lot on our network.
Yep.
We are going to miss him terribly.
Surprising research just in.
A big reason to embrace the shift left mentality is that fixing a bug before it hits production will save you a ton of money in the long run. Or does it? Chris Hughes of the Resilient Cyber podcast points to a recent CISA advisory that found this theory of reduced security vulnerabilities, which will save your business's bottom line in the long run, dates from an unofficial IBM research body from the 1980s. He pointed to a recent Comparatech study that found company stock prices returned to pre-breach levels within 53 days of disclosure on average, with an average price dip of 1.4%. Now, there are obvious good cybersecurity reasons to care about fixing bugs early, but I'm going to ask you, Andy, I'll start with you. Is Shift Left stalling out because there isn't a compelling business case for it? What do you think?
So I love that people have finally twigged to the fact that the whole like 10x cost for every waterfall stage later you fix something was never even a study, like unofficial IBM research body. It was a think piece somebody wrote. Like, I've known this my whole career. Like, it was a thing that was very obvious. Like, how did you find research data that shows exactly 10x per stage? Oh, you didn't. And yet somehow it has persisted, because logically it does feel right. And it does, but not for bugs. It's for software defects. Things that are architecturally misdesigned get ruinously expensive the longer you leave them there, if you're ever going to fix them. So, important thing to note, some things you're never going to fix, and that's okay, but some things you will need to fix, and the more people who are using it, the harder it is to fix. I also want to look at this Comparatech study, because I've seen a bunch of others like this. Pre-breach levels isn't what's interesting, and 53 days probably is short enough that it might be. But the question is, everybody's stock is slowly going up over time. Like, the market goes up. Do you lose 53 days permanently? That is to say, now you're sort of reset at a slightly lower level than you should have been, or are you continuing to go up with the market? Like, I'd like to see more studies sort of showing a trend analysis of the market rather than just looking at like my one line.
That is a really good point.
Because just look, quantitative easing keeps dumping money into the stock market. So everybody's stocks are going up. If you're not going up, then there's fundamentally a problem with you if money being plentiful isn't showing up there. So that's just looking at the data. High level, I think the biggest challenge of Shift Left is most of the vulnerabilities we tell people to fix don't matter. And all you have to do is tell them one that they can look at that doesn't matter, and they will not listen to the 999 that do. Unfortunately, we're often in the state of telling them, like, here's 999 that don't matter, and there's one in here that will matter. Good luck finding it.
All right, Mike, I'm throwing this to you. First of all, I think we all bought in originally to the Shift Left philosophy because it seems like common sense, doesn't it? This is just sort of a theory we generally adopt in all parts of our lives. Let's deal with this problem early in our home. Let's fix the pipes now so we don't have a water leak later that causes a fortune, and house damage. So what do you think?
Yeah, so I couldn't disagree with Andy more. No, I'm just kidding. I think.
Oh, by the way, you don't know how much I enjoy just hearing that phrase. We are, by the way, we're gonna pull that.
This is the whole reason David brought me on here, was just so I could say things like that.
You take that right out of context.
So I couldn't disagree with Andy more. It's gonna go on my soundboard. I'm just gonna keep playing it over and over again.
So the reality of it is when we grew up as kids and we had somebody as a mentor kind of show us, hey, you're going to do this, do it. You can do it right the first time, or you can do it again, right? How many times have we heard that? So kind of the same principle as Shift Left is let's focus on getting this right, getting it faster, getting it done better, getting it all involved, right? So how do I get the people on the left-hand side further in development smarter, better about creating secure programs? So I need less of the right-hand side, right? Less of the security vulnerability experts, because those people cost money. And I want those people don't generate revenue, right? They don't. Security people don't generate revenue, right? Get the developers developing more stuff right the first time. They can continue on doing more feature requests and things like that. That's why I think Shift Left made sense. Fake supportive data, right? Alternative facts, whatever you want to call it. Be damned. I think we were all like, hey, let's focus on making more changes better and feature requests.
I just need to point out that Akamai has a multi-billion-dollar security business that resulted from the belief that security people could bring in revenue.
That's true. This is true. This is not true.
What is it? Is it true or is it not true?
Is it true or not true? We don't even know.
No, I don't know where you got those numbers from. 70% of all statistics are made up on the spot, Andy.
73.5% of statistics are made up on the spot.
You're right.
You have to make it sound
73.5.
plausibly like you didn't make it up. That was the problem with the original IBM study, was they just said like 10x per stage.
Right.
So it was very obvious this was not actually a study, but somebody's like white paper. I'd say PowerPoint, but this predated PowerPoint.
Right.
Can this be measured?
Measuring a CISO's performance is easy, right? If you didn't get it hacked, they are doing a great job. So security journalist J.M. Porup points out that the CISO as, quote, scapegoat in waiting remains distressingly prevalent. But he has a really great encapsulation of what the CISO is actually responsible for. The CISO, quote, should be held responsible for identifying risk, for making good recommendations for managing risk, and then executing to meet the risk tolerance of the business within the given budget of time and money. I will start with you, Mike. Does that sound good to you? And if so, how do we start measuring a CISO's performance?
So, yeah, keep us from being hacked. That's the default, right? And I think a lot of times that's a true point, right? Did we get hacked? But a lot of times, and Andy knows this, it's not my fault. I could have every tool, every process in the world in place, and we're still going to get hacked. We're still going to get breached. We're still going to, and some companies hire CISOs just for that fact. You're going to be the fall person in this case. So no, I don't agree that that's a good statistic. I think better statistics are, did you streamline operations by reducing the amount of failures across vulnerabilities and patching? And did you stick to your maintenance periods? Did you have things like that? Anixia.io as a good product that shows all these things. Gartner has some good tools that kind of showcase what makes an effective CISO. But the hacking thing, it's just, unfortunately, it's just going to happen.
All right. Measuring a CISO's performance, Andy, do you agree with this recommended assessment on how to do it? Essentially, risk management advisor.
I mean, there's a risk management advisor role, but the first thing that's important to remember is that CISO is not a singular job. It is many, many jobs. And so there's not one way to grade a CISO, because if your CISO isn't a risk advisor to the business, then why are you using risk advisor grading? So this is like why I wrote the idealized CISO job description. Each one of those should probably have its own way to measure it. I like to measure success rather than failure, because this really feels like it's, how do you know if your CISO failed? And at the end of the day, if your company got breached, it doesn't matter if you wrote it down, that's your failure. Suck it up. That's part of our job description, is helping the business make wiser risk choices. You failed at that. Like the fact that you wrote it down and they're like, okay, fine, that's a failure of communication.
Hold it. I'm wondering, Andy, in your career, have you been chewed out before for failing what was perceived failing?
Absolutely. For both failing and for perceived failing. I have been chewed out after somebody 4 years after they made a risk decision that I had briefed them on making the risk decision, that their team had made the risk. In this case, they had chosen to mitigate a risk, but it was expensive. And 4 years later, like all of a sudden the bill's coming due and they're like, we should never have made this decision. And I'm like, you made the decision. I have the notes from the meeting. And they're like, well, I wasn't properly informed. I'm like, well, here's the briefing we presented you with. I got chewed out. At the end of the day, they did not like the decision that they made. And it was me as the advisor who had helped guide them through that decision process. And like everybody was on board, like their direct reports had agreed with the decision at the time. And now all of a sudden it's an unacceptable one. And rather than just saying, right, business has changed, we're changing our decision, very important that there was a scapegoat. I was the scapegoat.
What do you get them patted on the back for? I'll start with you, Mike.
So my job and what I do today is more solutions driving, right? So as a CISO, I have folks that want to do certain things and, hey, I want to do this, right? And we don't do the let's protect after the fact. We like, hey, I want to be the KNOW police. The no police is what I tell people. I don't want to be the NO. I just need to know about it. If I know about it, I'll help you build a solution, right? I started my career in IT. So if I can help you build a solution and do that, that's where I get patted on the back. You enabled this to happen in a secure manner and everybody's happy, right? It's a win-win-win situation. That's what I get patted on the back for.
And Andy, what would you add to that?
So I love to add near misses. Like my whole job is if I have succeeded at getting people to make wiser risk choices, There will be evidence of that wisdom by near misses. Oh, we had an incident, but it wasn't that bad because you had this control in place. Like, oh, edge system got breached, but it couldn't go anywhere because all of the non-human identities were well controlled thanks to this project we rolled out. Like, whatever it's going to be, that's what I do. I take those and I go celebrate the people who did the work. Everybody knows I'm patting myself on the back for getting them to do the work, but now more people want to do work because I will point out that you saved the company.
Before I go any further, I do want to talk about our absolutely spectacular sponsor. You know who I'm talking about. It's ThreatLocker. As we all know, cybersecurity isn't just about fighting fires. It's about making sure they never start in the first place. Maybe a think back to shift left here. That's where ThreatLocker comes in. With ThreatLocker's deny by default approach, nothing runs on your network unless you say so. It's like having a digital bouncer guarding your organization, keeping out ransomware, zero-day exploits, and sneaky supply chain attacks. Plus, you get a full audit trail of every action because visibility is power. ThreatLocker's US-based support team makes setup seamless, so you can stop worrying about vulnerabilities and start focusing on what matters most. That's why thousands of companies trust ThreatLocker to keep their business running and secure. You can take control of your business's cybersecurity today. Visit threatlocker.com to learn more. And the address, it's spelled just the way it sounds, threatlocker.com. Go check it out.
It's time to play What's Worse?
It's time to play What's Worse. All right, Mike, I know you're aware of this game, yes?
Yep.
But you already used up your phrase, I couldn't disagree with Andy more, so now you're required to agree with me.
No, do not listen to him at all.
I've got a few of them.
There's a budget.
There is no budget. I want you to expend as many of those as you would like, Mike.
All right, you got it.
All right, I will make Andy answer first, and then you will agree or disagree with him. And this comes from Jarek Beeson.
Oh, man, this is going to suck. Jarek, you're not allowed to put in scenarios anymore. I can just already know that. His are always hard.
This one, I'm kind of leaning towards one over the other on this one. So I'm fearing it might not be balanced.
But usually, like his usually get a disagreement, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, well, let's see how this goes.
Right, I may have just like pumped him up, and that's not gonna deliver.
We'll see what happens. Jarek is currently the CISO over WM. This is what he asks. What's worse? You're a new CISO joining an organization post-breach. You get one of the following. You inherit a team with no experience, but each person has 3 certifications in security, none of which are for the cloud environment you secure or for the tools you use. Or you inherit a team with no experience, but each person has a master's in cybersecurity. What's worse?
So this one is kind of tricky because the correct answer is banned by the rules of what's worse, which is, well, I'm replacing either of these teams. Like neither of these teams is fit for duty. That's probably why you had a breach.
No, this is you got to pick one of these teams.
But I have to pick one. Like, well, he says you inherit, but like I could try to tweak it, but we're not going to tweak it. I'm stuck with this team because like one
or the other.
Okay, I'm going to add in like the company has a hiring freeze, and anybody I let go, I'm not allowed to backfill. So I'm stuck with these people. So I have a bunch of people with master's degrees and no work experience.
The other one also, neither team has work experience.
No. I have a group with experience and certifications, but not experience in the systems I run.
Correct.
Okay. I want that team. Probably. I hope but it had some experience. Great. I want that.
No. They don't
have no experience.
They have experience solely through the certifications. That's it.
So I have 2 teams.
So you inherit a team with no experience.
And it's no experience at all.
But each person has 3 certifications in security, none of which are for the cloud environment.
Oh, okay. But they got them like through some quickie boot camp. And
could be. You don't know.
But no job experience for either team.
And no, it doesn't. It's not for the cloud environment or for the tools you use. So all their certifications are on something else, doesn't reflect anything in your environment.
But that certification doesn't actually include job experience either. That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it doesn't. So there's no job experience anywhere.
No job experience anywhere. So either I get people with 3 random certifications that do not apply, or I get people with a master's degree in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
I'm taking the team with the master's degree. So sorry, all the certification people, the 3 certifications that do not apply to any experience you have are not a thing I'm going to value. I'm going to value that master's degree in cybersecurity. Slightly more, but only slightly more. Just to be clear, not one of my favorite things, but I'm going to take those folks.
All right. So Andy is saying the first scenario is worse, the 3 pointless certifications.
So I do want to double.
By the way, in general, before I go to you, Mike, in general, what percentage of certifications are pointless, Andy?
Am I allowed to pick a number higher than 100%? But I really, really want to clarify, which is the getting through the recruiting pipeline often requires certifications. So I do not want it to sound like I'm just dissing on all certifications, but the experience is what matters.
Yes, I know.
If I thought originally that I had this group with certifications, had experience on different systems, in which case I would have taken them in a heartbeat, but they have no experience in certifications. That's not actually something useful. Like, it's like, oh, so if I put a system in front of you, you might know how to click the buttons, because that's what most certifications are teaching you, but you've never even used that system before, let alone the ones we've got. So yeah, that's actually almost like a negative signal for me, because I assume none of you have a master's degree, and probably a lot of you don't even have bachelors, for what value those are worth. That's why I went the way I did.
Let's give Mike a chance to speak.
I'm trying to make sure Mike doesn't disagree with me by hitting all the arguments before
You're
you get
trying to make sure Mike doesn't disagree with you?
So I hear what you're saying. Let me add a counterpoint to that. So I like what you asked David about the question of, are these experienced German ones? Because the CISP requires several years experience. Even if you have other certifications, there's at least a minimum of 3 or 4 years experience.
So they didn't get that certification. I'll tell you that much.
On paper, it requires that.
Yeah, so it's not a Kobayashi Maru like no win situation. So,
but he didn't say the CISP. Like, these could just be like you went to some security boot camp and you got your whatever.
It's an Azure security,
right? You got an Azure security
architecture,
and I'm using AWS or GCP shop.
And you got hired by an AWS company,
right? And the question you didn't ask is, are these CPE driven ones, right? So you talk about experience with a master's degree, and they do say master's generates like a 5-year. The assumption of a 5-year experience within that education. I will say the CPEs, the Certified Professional Education Studies that you require to maintain some of these certs, require that experience. And if you don't have it, you do training, you do this, you do that, and there's a consistent training.
People can get CPEs listening to this show. I mean, isn't the CPE is kind of vague?
Yeah. The CPE, look, I host webinars all the time, and I will tell you that if you run a webinar at noon Eastern, which is one of the common times to do it, basically you'll get a lot of people who show up and then walk away from their computer because they just want the CPE credits for having done it. The CPE system is worthless at this point, in my opinion.
All right. And this show today is brought to you by Certifications R Us.
Yeah. One of these days I will register and incorporate the formerly certified security professional certification so that you can just get rid of all your other ones and keep ours.
There you go.
All right, Mike, come on. Stop, Andy. Mike, you need to give your rationale on who you're picking here. Which of these two scenarios?
Yeah, so my rationale is I actually like the certifications more.
So we're disagreeing with Andy here.
You're a highly educated person, Andy. You established that early on, and I've known you, I think, off and on for a few years.
Yeah, but I don't have a master's degree. Like, I think the master's is a negative and the certs are a negative. It's just which one is more.
It can be. Yeah. So I got my bachelor's later on in life. I'm actually pursuing my master's now. And I'm really getting the master's really just kind of to stand out a little bit. My certifications have really kind of exposed me not just to route memorization, right? He can memorize a test. It's the networking and meeting people and exposure of ideas and everything from other people. The ISC Squared conference where I met Sean that we talked about in the beginning. I think there's a hidden quantification there that's not talked about. And I know not everybody goes to certification conferences to meet people.
And ISC Squared is not what it used to be.
It's not, but and shame on you folks out there. You go to a conference, meet the person to the left of you, meet to the person to the right of you. Just please, if you go to conferences, at least meet people. But
go sit at a random table for lunch and talk to people you don't know.
Bingo. Talk to people you know.
Yeah, can I tell you, this is my number one pet peeve, is when you go to a conference with your 5 coworkers and you sit and eat with your 5 coworkers. Stop doing that.
Don't do that at all.
Don't do that.
No, Jarek, this was a good one, because the reality is Mike and I are both sitting here going, we would take anybody with experience. Like, I will be honest, I was going to agree with Mike originally because I thought the certifications at least came with experience. Give me a certified Azure engineer for my GCP platform over some random with a master's degree. Absolutely, in a heartbeat.
Yeah. CompTIA Sec Plus, you're like, every 3 years you got to retest for that. It's a hard one. It's a tough one.
Yeah. But I'm assuming if they have not retested yet because they have no work experience.
Right.
Like, this feels like somebody, like, these people are what we got a lot of. And I think, David, you may, or maybe somebody else that I saw ranting about this was one of these boot camps that told you not only would it get you to a certain point, but then you could put on your resume that you were an intern for them, so that now you have job experience too.
I did not post that at all.
No.
Okay, I saw somebody, I think it was in a CISO Slack channel I was in.
That's terrible.
Right. And like, this is the problem, is like the certifications have basically become a scam, and not all of them are, but we can't tell them apart anymore.
They were a scam 25 years ago. When people were like, I'm Microsoft certified, you're like, great, I need you to give me a subnet base down from these IP addresses. And they just look at you and you're like, you don't know anything about subnets, do you?
Yeah. The Cisco certification, like the CCIE matter.
This is going off the rails here, gentlemen.
Yep. What's worse?
Mike, what's worse? You think the second...
I think the master's degree is worse. I'm going with Team Cert.
Okay, Jarek, you win.
There you go. We have disagreement. Thank you, Mike. Yeah. Andy?
Sorry, Andy.
See, Jarek needs to be banned because I think everyone he's brought in has been a disagreement.
No, quite the opposite. Jarek is awesome.
I love Jarek, but he should be banned.
Last time both of us saw him was in Houston.
Yeah.
Jarek's great, sends great what's worse scenarios. Keep them coming, especially when people disagree with Andy.
That was a good one.
That's a good one.
It is.
How is the CISO role evolving?
Do CISOs need to get better at improv? Mike Johnson, our frequent co-host and CISO of Rivian, suggested that the power of saying yes and can help make a CISO lean into more creative solutions, particularly around adopting new technology. And this is a tease to you, Mike, when you said the Department of KNOW. Now, he frames this as asking yourself, how do I secure something versus asking, can I? Now, his point isn't that it will always be feasible to secure things, but allowing for the possibility can have real benefits to your security program and to the business. Whether you're figuring out how to bring iPhones into your organization before the advent of MDM or rolling out new Gen AI tools. Actually, I'm going to start with you, Mike, on this one. Have you seen this yes and framing come up with novel solutions to security problems? Because I think that's how you addressed it earlier in this show.
Yeah, so this is kind of the evolution, is how do I secure this, right? And we get to see a lot of stuff, and you're like, why would you do that? You're like, all right, tell you what, maybe we're asking the wrong question. And so a lot of times we are the people that change the question, right? I don't think we need to be looking at that. I think we need to look over here, right? So we had somebody in our healthcare business say, hey, I have a Bluetooth thing that I want to plug into a patient's spine. Now, the immediate thing to this is, why would you do that? But the second thing is, what benefits do you get out of that device versus any other device? Let's look at other solutions here that are in that space that provide that same information. And you get those people who wanted that spine crazy Bluetooth device to start going, yeah, why did I want Bluetooth? Like, well, what other things are there? Oh, there's a whole laundry. Oh, you could buy this solution and this generates this data. I think it's important to kind of see that, right? And challenge that person who's looking at those solutions or things like that to look in other different directions. And that's what we are. We're starting to change how we answer and solve questions. I just happen to transparently tie in security into it.
It's a good philosophical sort of approach, I believe. So, Andy, are you a do I or a can I questioner?
So I would take it actually a step further. And rather than saying do I or can I, you say, how would I?
Well, that's what he's saying. How would I? It is the same thing.
Right. No, but it's not yes and. It's what if. Right? You don't want to commit a yes or a no because that already constrains you. The question becomes, how would we? Actually, it's even better than how would I. How would we? Because you're not the one making the decision at the end of the day. The only decision a security person makes is whether or not they want to escalate and die on that hill. Right? What we do is we give you advice. So you say, okay, you want to do X. Okay, well, how would we do X to meet our safety goals? Let's have that conversation. And maybe at the end of the day, we don't find a way to make it work, or maybe we do. So yes, in general, I agree with the approach. I just don't like the yes and. First of all, there's so many people who've used yes and as their way to say no that I think it actually is a buzz for people. They hear yes and they're like, oh God, that's not a yes.
Well, I'm reminded about it. This goes back a long time ago. We had a question that came in about like you found a USB drive on the ground. How would you safely look at it? And that kind of falls.
The answer is I call Tim April. Sorry, if Tim's listening, he'll love that I shouted him. If you're a CISO, your answer should be, I have a person on my team I hand it to who will look at it. I don't look at these things. Like I've got a malware reverse engineer somewhere on my team. I give it to them to go figure out what's on it.
That wasn't one of the answers, but that's a good answer too. Regardless.
Sorry, I'm a former Air Force officer, and one of the things you learn as a cadet before you become a second lieutenant is the answer to almost everything. If you get asked to like go put up a flagpole, this is a classic one. If you get your new squadron and they say, hey, we need you to put up a flagpole, the correct answer is go find an NCO and say, NCO, we need to put up a flagpole. How much money do you need? And then you go buy the beer for the enlisted folks who are going to put it up. Now, the funniest part about that as a story is the first assignment I had was with a squadron that had more second lieutenants than any other rank. And so they said, second lieutenants, your job is to put up the flagpole as a team building activity. No, you may not delegate it.
Is this partnership feasible?
Forget speaking the language of the business. Let's zero in on how CISOs get along better with the CFO. There can be a lot of barriers to a constructive relationship with a CFO. It's hard to quantify the return of cyber investments and overall risk reduction strategies, and cyber teams can be seen as project impediments when they discover security issues close to a delivery date, as pointed out by David Gee on CISO Online. To build up that relationship, he suggests reverse mentoring to let the CISO offer cybersecurity insights and leaning into a CFO's preferred solution approach for new tools, likely focusing on the integrated platforms versus best in breed to make the investment story a little bit clearer. So those sound like good starters, but Mike, where have you had success in building a productive relationship with your CFO?
So I think a lot of it has to do with, here are my use cases. Like I'm a very use case driven person, right? These are the things I'm trying to accomplish. And I attach to that a numerical figure, right? I think that's a $50,000 problem. I think that's a $100,000 problem. And I go out and I validate whether there's truth to that. Like, that's a $600,000 problem. And then I come back and say, here's the risk. I thought it was 100. Turns out it's a 600,000, at least with these 2-3 vendors that are out there today. Do we want to accept the risk? Do we want to move forward? Here's what it will eliminate. Oh, by the way, here's the business operational value we can get out of this solution as well, right? So that's a hard conversation. I don't think is this partnership feasible? I think it has to be feasible. You have to partner with every one of those senior executives that needs to help you push in a team. It's good to have arguments. It's better to have partnerships with all of them, right? So I think it's something we have to do.
All right, Andy, I am throwing this one to you. What's your relationship that you've had in the past with CFOs?
So you should have a great relationship with your CFO. And the first thing you should go do, if you do not have an MBA or have never been an accountant, is go learn accounting. You should be conversant with double entry bookkeeping, with cash versus accrual, with public company finance. You should know the difference between GAAP and non-GAAP and why that matters. If you're not yet profitable, you should learn the difference between EBITDA, FCF, and EPS, and why those are each different metrics and why that matters. Like, you need this stuff. Why? Because it'll let you understand how the CFO thinks, right? So you can have the right conversations. You should be able to run your own budget and execute on it. Like, finance will give you a finance partner. I'll tell you something. They do not know how you spend money better than you do. So you'd better maintain your own set of books so that when they screw something up, you can be like, hey, what did you just do to me? Now you're in a place where you can talk to the CFO and learn about how they think about risk. Contrary to what most people in the security community have been taught, the CFO does not measure everything as ROI. And in fact, the biggest way to find yourself on the outs with the CFO is to pretend that you can measure an ROI that isn't real. Because they'll be like, wait a second, you promised me money. Where's the money? Like, ROI means I have more money. What's going on? Like, maybe you're talking about risk reduction, but learn their language. And for those of you who think, oh no, I can quantify everything, go sit down with your CFO and ask them how they quantify Forex risk. Sorry, that's foreign exchange risk. And how do they communicate it? Because they don't walk in and say, our Forex risk is $17.5 million. They say, no, like right now, they talk qualitatively about like what the sort of ratios are and where they might go and how they're going to hedge and in what scenarios what those hedges look like. And you'll notice that this is the most quantitative thing they could do, and they do not try to reduce it to a single number. So why are you trying? Like, that conversation will teach you.
That's interesting. If the CFO ain't doing it, you shouldn't.
Right. We have this like mindset of we're going to quantify risk and we're going to get to return on investment. No, you don't need to. You have to figure out what's going to convince the CFO, and every CFO is different. But learn to talk their language, demonstrate you understand their risk. And honestly, go in and let's talk about the actual risks that they deal with, like business email compromise. They're the first ones hit by it. So
absolutely,
go talk to them about that.
Let me ask both of you. This came up on a previous episode a number of years ago, that we had someone who wrote in and said, my mentor, and he specifically chose a CFO to be his mentor. It sounds like whatever you're saying, that for a CISO, having a CFO as a mentor is probably a pretty wise idea. What do you think?
So I don't know that I would say as a mentor. I think that we fetishize mentorship a little too much in our industry. You should be able to learn from everybody. Like, my first job was in bookkeeping. So I didn't need a CFO as a mentor, but I had CFO as colleagues. I had friends in the finance world because I could go talk to them, and I understood their language. They knew I could speak their language. But absolutely, like, if you can find one to be a mentor, but the problem with the phrase mentor is it really does imply something that most people are not willing to sign up to around like how much time they're going to commit to the relationship.
So I think any senior level executive that has experience would be a good quote unquote mentor. To Andy's point, I think business, right? Like, it's nice to understand CFO because that's, they hold the purse strings sometimes. It really is, how do you understand business as a CISO, as a leader? How do you understand business? Can you convey that to other leaders above you and higher up? And that's it, right? And sometimes the language of finance is the easiest way to get to a lot of board members and senior leadership. Hey, what's the risk numerically on a dollar amount perspective? Well, we pay $5 million a year for $20 million in cyber insurance. Well, is that going to cover everything? No, our liability is probably 30 plus million. You're like, okay, so we're at least 10 million short on an eventual large scale cyber event. And you're like, yeah. I mean, just in that, you already mentioned, you're 10 million short just in cyber risk, and maybe we need more cyber liability insurance, or maybe we need a second one, or things like that. You're starting to communicate in their language, right? They don't need to know, well, the data protection science and everything else is, and you're going to lose them. Right. Like, how much is this going to cost us in a theoretical event, and what's the probability of that theoretical event's going to happen, right? I've had mentors before who were VP of sales. Obviously my current boss is a mentor. He's a fantastic human being, but I've never had a CFO that was a mentor. I've had them as respected peers, but never as a mentor. So I don't see true value other than here's how you can easily communicate to someone like me, Mike, or like us that have like-minded, but there's value in that, right? You can find value in that.
Well, I hope our audience found value in this very episode, whether you learned all these accounting terms that Andy rattled off earlier or not. But thank you very much, Mike. Thank you very much, Andy. I want to thank our audience as well, and our sponsor. That would be ThreatLocker. Remember, go to their website, threatlocker.com. They will help you with your zero trust journey. And actually, when this episode airs, I will have attended their live show called Zero Trust World, which we are doing a live audience recording there as well. Any last thoughts that you have for today's episode, Mike?
Number one, thanks for having me. This is really cool. It was great hearing what Andy's thoughts were and conversing with you all. I think we are evolving, right? And I think we're evolving in different ways and different things depending on what vertical you're in and what your background was. We're starting to experience, I don't know Andy's background, but my background was in IT. And so I approach everything with a solution-driven problem. I think I'm meeting people now who are like, I've always been in cybersecurity. And you're like, wow, okay, so you don't know IT. You're like, I've done it. I've done SQL databases, application development, you name it. Like, I've done it. And you're like, yeah, I don't know anything about networking. You're like, they make people like you? How did you get out of here? So I think we're evolving, right? And as leaders, we need to evolve with it, right? And hopefully that just makes us better.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much. Thank you, Andy, and thank you, our audience. We greatly appreciate your contributions and for listening to the CISO Series podcast.
That wraps up another episode. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do. We have lots more shows on our website, CISOseries.com. Please join us on Fridays for our live shows, Super Cyber Friday, our virtual meetup, and Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review. This show thrives on your input. Go to the participate menu on our site for plenty of ways to get involved, including recording a question or a comment for the show. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, contact David Spark directly at david@cisoseries.com. Thank you for listening to the CISO Series podcast.